everyone, my name is Vina, aka Miss WC Reader, and welcome back to my channel. And today I wanted to talk about a discussion I saw on Twitter that I found really interesting. So we always talk about accessibility when it comes to book as far as having different formats available, like ebook versus physical book versus audiobook. But I don't really hear too much discussion about page length and writing style being an accessibility problem as well. So I saw this tweet, and it was from a librarian, and it said, "Ugh, I wish YA authors and publishing would do more standalones. Most of my students don't have the capacity, endurance, or motivation to read series of 400 plus page books. More standalones, please. More less than 300 page books, please. More 14 to 16-year-old protagonists, please." And I agree. That's something that I've been thinking about as well, especially having worked with students in my community. I live in a mostly Black and brown community, and there are a lot of reluctant readers. In fact, most teens just don't want to read. It's very difficult to get teens to read. And even on the middle grade level, it's getting more difficult to get these kids to read. And I find that some of the books are so long. When I was a teen reader, large books intimidated me. Yes, I read all the time. Yes, I went to the library several times a month. But most of my books were 250 pages or less, and that was kind of the norm. The only time I can recall reading a 400-page book from start to finish was when I was reading a book that had 3 stories in it. So it was each of them was like reading a full-length story, because it was more the norm for stories to be shorter in teen fiction when I was a teen, and now I find that ever since Twilight, it's been the standard to have these long books, and that just doesn't fit in with everybody's lifestyle. Like, teens are busy. They're in school all day, and then they gotta come home and do homework, and then some of them are doing things after school, whether it's volunteer, whether it's dance, sports, so many different activities going on that they don't always have time to then sit down and read these long books. And one way to get them interested maybe is shorter page length. Like, there were a lot of teachers and librarians commenting on this post, and they were asking for shorter chapters. Some of them were asking for more standalones because they were having trouble getting students to follow along with series. Some of them mentioned that their students respond more to these shorter books, and there definitely aren't a lot of standalone fantasies in YA. Everything is either a duology or a trilogy, more often than not a trilogy. And I find, even myself, as a grown-ass adult, I can't always do these 400 plus page books, and I can't always do these trilogies. Like, sometimes it feels like the story should have been a standalone, but they stretched it out to a trilogy in order to get more eyes on it and keep the story going. And I think some publishers need to step back and realize some of these stories can be one book, because there's not always enough story to stretch out into 3 books, and then you get a lot of filler, and it's hard to stay engaged sometimes in the middle of these books when it seems like nothing is happening to move the story along or to really aid in character development. So I just found it interesting that a lot of these librarians and teachers were saying that they wanted more short books as well. Like, I would actually love to see more fantasy series that are shorter pages, even if they are multiple books. Like, maybe a 250 page book, but it's a series, so that way they can read them in these smaller, quicker installments. Also, I noticed that sometimes when the books are shorter, people say they are too short. Like when I read The Taking of Jake Livingston, a lot of people said that the book was way too short because it was 250 pages. And they felt it needed more to develop the character along because it didn't get fully into the origin of his powers. But I don't think the book set out necessarily to really go into that aspect. I also think there should be more 14 to 16-year-old protagonists. It's kind of crazy that that's pushed back against when it comes to YA. Like, there are a lot of teens within that 13 to 16 age range feel that they are too old for middle grade because that feels a lot more babyish to them. But then they also feel sometimes too young for the YA because a lot of the YA features about 17-year-old characters, and some of it is definitely targeting more the adult reader than the teen reader as far as the language used and even some of like the themes that it explores. Now granted, students are definitely exploring a lot of complex themes in school, don't get me wrong, but not every teen is on the level to do that standalone reading by themselves. Like even myself, there were a couple of books that I started and then the vocabulary was just a lot. Like it felt very flowery purple prose right off the bat. And I'm just like, and I had to close the book because it just was not something that I was in the mood for, and it felt like there were a lot of metaphors and allusions, and sometimes that's a little much when you're just going into a story that you just want to kick back and have fun with. Like I said, those teens do definitely deserve to see younger teens in the stories. Like 14 through 16-year-olds are also navigating high school life, and it's not easy at all. And it's good to have those stories that follow people your age, even if it's something that they're gonna read in like 7th or 8th grade. Because I did start reading teen books before high school. Like when I was like about 12, I started reading more of the teen books, and a lot of kids do want to read about people who are slightly older than them, but where they aren't necessarily always going through everything, but they can relate to some to a lot of the themes. And I feel like prior to these newer age categories like middle grade and YA, there were a lot more stories that were spread across age groups. Like it was so easy to find a book for an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old versus now it's kind of harder, and some of the books might read too old, some of the books might read too young, and it's hard to find that sweet spot. I definitely think that publishing needs to do a better job filling in those gaps with the students they're leaving behind. One publisher that I do reviews for sometimes, I think does a decent job, is Scholastic. They do have books specifically for that 8 to 12 age group that often gets ignored, and they try to have books for different age groups as students move along in school. And I think part of that is because they are so heavily in the schools with their books, that's something that they're paying attention to. So when I'm looking, for example, for my 15-year-old niece, who is a very reluctant reader, it's hard to get her out of that phone. I try to look to them sometimes for stories, and I think that shorter books would definitely help someone like her. It's like shorter fantasies, because it's not that she doesn't want a black fantasy. She just doesn't want a 400+ page tome. So let me know what your thoughts are down below. Should YA do shorter books? Should they do some more 14 to 16-year-old protagonists? If you liked this video, make sure to hit that like button. Continue to follow this channel for more videos like it. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I will check in with you guys soon. Bye!